Pope Francis is once again promoting his disgraced friend, a Jesuit celebrity abuser. Joining us with the details, Church Militant's Rome correspondent, Dr. Jules Gomes. Jules, tell us about the Pope's latest promotion of a predator priest who also happens to be his friend.
We are talking about Father Marko Ivan Rupnik, Brad, the world-famous mosaic artist who has been accused of sexually, physically, emotionally, and psychologically abusing over 25 nuns. And Pope Francis expounded a mosaic icon and sent it in his video greetings to the 16th Marian Congress in Aparecida in Brazil. And this has really got victims of sexual abuse very, very angry indeed.
So this is an icon that was crafted by Rupnik, and the Pope just recently sent this down to Brazil at this Congress. Can you give our viewers, remind them just how bad Rupnik really is?
Yes, he sent this video on Friday to the participants of that Congress. You can see the video on the Vatican News website. Interestingly, they don't mention that it is Rupnik's icon. You can also see this posted by the Vatican on YouTube. Now, this icon, by the way, is in the papal apartments, and Rupnik was excommunicated for absolving a woman he had sex with. He absolved her in the sacrament of confession. He violated canon law. He was excommunicated. But Pope Francis apparently intervened directly and lifted his excommunication within a month. He has also been accused, as I said, and at least 4 nuns have now testified to his sexual abuse. It got so bad that in one case he had a threesome with 2 nuns in bed. And he even tried to groom other nuns to have threesomes with him. The details, Brad, are pretty vulgar and graphic. And although, they're very distasteful, we've been compelled to write many, many stories on Rupnik and post it on our website.
Now, can you go over again just briefly? You mentioned it already, but what exactly is Pope Francis doing with this particular art piece of Rupnik's?
Well, he is doing a little bit of an exegesis on this icon of the Blessed Virgin Mary with the infant Jesus. And he says, he directs the attention of his viewers to the icon, and he says, he is God. Jesus is God who has the fullness of the law in one hand. The infant Jesus seems to be holding something like the scriptures there, but he is also man, and he has to hold on to the mantle of the Virgin so as not to fall. Now, this is a very dodgy Christology. I mean, even dodgier Mariology, because basically he's saying if Jesus doesn't hold on to Mama Mary, as God, he's going to fall down. And he also goes on to talk about how Mary is the ladder that brings us to Jesus, because it was using Mary that Jesus descended and, came to us. So the icon is an important part of his, very brief video message to the bishops and the other participants of this Mariological Congress in Aparecida in Brazil.
Yeah, I mean, it comes from the mind of Rupnik, basically, that Jesus here has to be holding on to Mary lest he fall. I don't even think the Blessed Mother would like that interpretation being given whatsoever. But you mentioned, Jules, the Pope sending this art piece down to the Congress in Brazil. Is Rupnik kind of a big deal down there, quite a celebrity down there?
Well, absolutely. He and his organization, the Centro Aletti, the Aletti Center, which, by the way, he has, in a sense, formed in collaboration with a company And it's illegal for him to do so, illegal in the canonical sense of the word, because he's not only broken his vow of chastity, but he's broken his vow of poverty by secretly owning 90% of this company. 10% of it is owned by another nun, and it makes over €1 million every year. Now, a lot of the money has come from the basilica in Paricida, and the basilica there commissioned him to do this, and it's virtually plastered from top to bottom with Rupnik's mosaics. And there were questions raised when this whole scandal came to light a few months ago, if the basilica was going to withdraw this commission. But the basilica obviously doesn't want to leave it incomplete. And despite, demands from victims that this should not be allowed to go ahead, they don't want to make a commitment on this issue.
So we have Rupnik here, a Jesuit. Now, he would be in the vows, poverty, chastity, obedience. Poverty, you say, he just completely decimated with owning this company, something his superiors didn't even know about or claimed to not know about. Also, the dashing his chastity, vow of chastity, because of all these nuns, and one of them was an accomplice he was actually excommunicated for absolving her. All of this, and now Rupnik is a close friend of Francis. This isn't the first time Pope Francis promoted Rupnik, is it?
Brad, you forgot to mention obedience, because he's violated the restrictions put on him. And when the superior gave him an opportunity to participate in the investigations and clear his name, he basically refused to do that. No, this isn't the first time Francis has promoted him, because Francis invited him to preach, despite knowing all about him, a Lenten meditation when the papal preacher, Father Raniero Cantalames, was ill, and Rupnik turned out to be the replacement. He was commissioned to paint an icon for the World Day of Families. This was then used on a Vatican stamp, the cover of the Vatican stamp album. Again, a huge outcry as a result of that. So the Italian blog Il Sismografo that first reported this story is basically asking whether Francis is actually sending out a message to people and saying, I don't care what you think, I'm going to stand by Rupnik. And it's almost, throwing aside all the complaints that have come about Rupnik. And some of the nuns, by the way, did write directly to Pope Francis. There were 3 letters of complaint sent directly to Francis, and he ignored them as well.
Okay, so this isn't sending out a very good message to clerical sex abuse victims in general, is it?
It isn't. We do know that churches in France, for example, have actually begun removing some of the paintings that were done by priests who are sexual abusers. And recently, in the Pope John Paul II memorial in Krakow, in Poland, victims said they would not sit in the chapel where Rupnik's paintings, Rupnik's artworks, rather, were being displayed. And the authorities of that shrine were very respectful of the feelings of the victims, and they did give them an alternative chapel to meet in.
Before closing, Jules, too, is a very egregious problem with absolving an accomplice in a sexual situation such as Rupnik was excommunicated for. Could you briefly just catch our audience up on the status of that excommunication and how the lifting of that was viewed by people such as canon lawyers?
Canon lawyers said that Pope Francis almost certainly would have, or they rather inevitably have known about it, because Cardinal Ladaria, the head of what was then the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith, would have had to consult him about it. Moreover, Rupnik is his close friend, and I've heard from sources that Rupnik would have phoned Pope Francis personally and got the excommunication lifted. There are people, of course, Pope Francis's Pope splainers, who defend the Pope and say, oh, no, he couldn't have known. But canon law very clearly says that such a grievous and grave sin that leads to excommunication can only be lifted by the Apostolic See. And Pope Francis was asked by the Associated Press reporter. He ducked and dodged the question. He gave a very ambiguous answer, but sources continue to say that it was indeed Francis who lifted this excommunication.
Well, it seems like the word scandal doesn't really exist in the Pope's vocabulary, and even bad optics might be a softer term, but even that seems to fly under the papal radar. Thanks, Jules, for staying on top of this ever-increasing scandal surrounding Rupnik.
Thank you, Brad.